Welcome to Sane-ish. I'm Joe Carducci. This has been a huge week for me. If you haven't already checked out the amazing conversation with Jennifer and Pumps from the I've Had It podcast, please take a listen. We had some unbelievably good laughs.
Ted Cruz is the most unfuckable person in America.
See, we debate this.
It starts number one is Ted Cruz.
And then, get this, I had a pinch me moment in conversation with the one and only Gavin Newsom with the Siren Network over on Substack. Can you please explain to our audience, what you're doing in the state of California regarding the potential redistricting of your congressional maps and why this may be something you have to do?
Well, we're fighting fire with fire. We don't want to do this, but to your point, your question rather, we have to do it at peril of being judged not only not to have lived, but to be judged watching democracy slip from right out underneath us. The reality is it's not just Texas that Donald Trump believes he's entitled to 5 congressional seats. He has sent his vice president to Indiana. He's making the case not just to what's going on up in Ohio, but Florida, Missouri, and other states. I imagine it's just the beginning. What, as we speak, is occurring in real time in Texas. And so my mindset, our mindset here in California is one of accountability, responsibility. We have agency. We're not bystanders. We can shape the future. And by taking some responsibility and moving assertively, as we have with the California legislature that just yesterday introduced a special election, a constitutional amendment that will, in essence, nullify the 5 votes that they claim to be picking up in Texas by asking the voters in a transparent and temporary way to make a determination for themselves to change our maps mid-decade in response to what occurred in Texas on November 4th.
Your support keeps all of this going and helps me bring these incredible people into your world. So please like, follow, and subscribe. Today, I'm joined by my friend Joel Rubin, a relentless fighter for democracy and justice who's never been afraid to call out the power plays and dirty tactics threatening our country. Joel's deep experience working on voting rights, election integrity, and combating extremism makes him one of the sharpest voices in the fight to protect our democracy. So we're diving into the state of American politics in 2025, the forces trying to undermine our election, the real risks we face, and how we fight back without losing hope or our sanity. Before we jump right in, let's talk about online privacy. We live in a world where your personal information is more accessible than ever, sometimes a little too accessible. Data brokers collect and sell your private details, your name, home address, phone number, even your browsing habits without you ever knowing. That's why I've partnered with Incogni. Incogni is here to ensure your data remains private and secure. This service is designed to help protect your personal data from data brokers who collect, aggregate, and sell it. Bad actors can't harm you if they can't find you. So sign up, give them permission to act on your behalf, and then they go out and demand that data brokers delete your personal info. Incogni is basically a digital hitman for your data. You don't have to email anyone, fill out forms, or jump through hoops. They handle the entire data removal process for you. And it doesn't just do that and walk away. Incogni also continuously monitors if your data is put back onto these databases, requesting repeated removals, keeping your data yours forever. Best of all, you can cancel anytime, and they also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can get it completely risk-free. Right now, you can get 60% off an annual by going to incogni.com and using the code JOJO. That's incogni.com/JOJO, capital J, capital O, capital J, capital O, and use the code JOJO at checkout. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Get 60% off an annual plan at incogni.com/JOJO and use the code JOJO at checkout. Now, let's get into it. Welcome back to the Sane-ish podcast, Joel Rubin. Hi, Joel. How are you?
I'm great, Joe. Great to be with you.
It's great to see you, as always. As always, I have 72 million questions related to what is going on in the world. We've had a very boring week, of course. What day was it? Friday? That Vladimir Putin touched down in Alaska? Even if my cousin Vladimir, he said, you don't roll out red carpet for a murderous dictator, especially one who is 5'7". I did not know this. But yeah, I want to talk about
Hey,
that.
5'7", I wouldn't necessarily be hostile to that 5'7" thing, but we can move on.
If you're 5'7", you're a very tall 5'7". Okay, you get your 5'7" is really 5'10" in. It's much
And
bigger
I
than
get a little hair bump there as opposed to
yeah.
Putin. It's very flat
Right.
and shiny. Yes.
Yeah, he is such a funny looking little pocket-sized dictator. But so I want to talk about Alaska because it pissed me off for a lot of reasons. It made me laugh for a lot of reasons, like Trump clapping like a trained seal, it's like fangirling, like here comes Dad, letting him ride in the beast, all of it. But I want to start with the optics for Vladimir Putin and for Russia Today, etc., about all of it, about American soil, about us having the men and women of our military on their hands and knees rolling out a red carpet for Donald Trump, about the flyover. So just like just on the optics, what did Russia get out of this versus us? And then substantively, what did anybody accomplish or not accomplish at the end of the day? And then we're going to move on to what's followed since.
I had this great conversation earlier today with an international reporter who called me to ask about the summit, and I said, "How's it going?" They're like, "Well, I was just up in Anchorage." I'm like, "Oh, lucky you! You got to fly like all the way to Alaska to ask a question and nobody answered."
Yeah,
he started laughing. Like that was it. To me, that's the summary of what we saw. It was photo op diplomacy in the extreme. Let's call it flip-flop photo op diplomacy, because literally the wet noodle fish of Donald Trump went in saying, ceasefire, we have to have a ceasefire. If we don't, there will be consequences, and came out and said, we don't need a ceasefire. We need something else. So, get into the optics of this. To me, the optics are everything. The optics actually are the substance of this summit. The optics for Putin are 110% victory, because for 3+ years, there have been several foundations of American policy towards Russia to protect Ukraine and Europe and us by extension. The foundations are military support, sanctions pressure, and international political isolation. Well, that last one just pulled the rug out right from under and said, here, Vladimir, here's your photo op. And in Moscow, they were thrilled. This was like victory for them. We are equal. They don't expect us to do anything. In fact, they told us one thing going in and they came out saying what we wanted. So that is a win substantively. And it really undermines the whole prospect of legitimate diplomacy going forward. And we can talk about that. But on Trump's side, on the optics, it was also a disaster. And you can tell by his reaction. He's deeply upset by being portrayed as a patsy.
yeah.
Well, if you don't want to be portrayed as a patsy, don't act like a patsy, right? Like, it's pretty simple. Don't host someone and then let them talk at the press conference first for ad nauseum 5-6 minutes, and then you basically mumble a few words and we're done.
Yeah.
Don't cancel the luncheon that you had scheduled where you were going to fed the guy, and apparently, according to, another leak, you were going to give him a nice gift.
Oh, God.
Alaska?
Was Alaska the gift?
Well, that's coming, baby, because look, if they were to send over ships and take over Alaska, do you think Trump would protect it? If he could cut a deal,
United States.
but he just wants the oil of Alaska, right? And he doesn't want Lisa Murkowski. Who knows what he would do? So I think there's a real intersection between the optics and the substance. And so, to me, the optics were a clear victory for Putin, which is why we saw the tornado rush of heads of state from Europe sprinting to the Oval Office to try to stop that momentum.
Yeah, that is exactly how that felt. It's interesting, again, to see how the right-wing media in particular is spinning that tornado, as you described it, of the European and world leaders flooding the White House during Zelensky's visit, they were like, oh, look, only Donald Trump could command such a presence of leadership. And it's like, that's not what's happening here. They're not showing up. Yeah.
They didn't come here to back up Donald Trump. They came here to defend Zelensky against Donald Trump.
Right.
They did not come here to show unity. They came here out of deep fear of where things were heading.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into where things were heading, may be heading also. But yeah, they showed up, and then because this is the game that you have to play with this thin-skinned narcissist, it's so North Korean cringy, cabinet meeting Donald Trump style cringy. One after the next, they were like, thank you, this is all because of you, you're amazing, you have the giantest penis, like your hands are the biggest in all of Europe. I think your hands are the size of Germany. Like they did the whole kiss the ring spectacle. Even Macron, but you have to do this. That's what's so effed up about it, is that that's the game, and everybody knows it. I mean, that's Netanyahu has done it. That all of these incredibly powerful leaders from Europe have done it, how to do it. But so that whole shit show. But yeah, so let's talk about that. But also, where post summit and potentially still now, where were we going? What was agreed to by potentially, let's just say, by Witkoff and Rubio, not necessarily Trump and Putin and Lavrov, etc. Yeah.
I mean, a couple of things. First of all, I have to say, watching them around the table, the thing that I loved the most was all the different accents.
Yeah.
Right. You had the Italian accent of Maloney, and you had the French accent of Macron, and it was like, oh, this is so neat, this is so interesting. But do they really believe what they're saying? They know the game.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help but think that even for Trump, there's a little bit of, he has to play nice with these people too. Why? Because the road to a Nobel Prize goes through Europe. He needs them. It's so self-centered, this entire diplomacy. And the thing that's so bizarre is that everybody's somehow now decided that the way to deal with the world is to make Donald Trump happy, work through Trump. It's no longer Ukraine, Russia. It's what does Trump want? But Trump wants a different thing every day. So this is a real problem. So to answer your question, where are we going is, I have no fucking clue. Because because I thought I did, and then I didn't, and then I didn't, and then I didn't. Now, where should we be going is there was this good idea, put security guarantees out on the table for Ukraine. And I kept on thinking, Joe, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a multilateral security organization in the heart of Europe that was strong and treaty bound? Wouldn't that be great? Couldn't that help us solve our...
What if we used a couple of letters? I'm thinking 3, maybe 4 letters. Maybe it rhymes with Cato or Plato. Oh, NATO! Right.
We have now figured out how to do security guarantees. Oh, wait, no, we can't do that. Oh, shit. So we need NATO-like. Okay, what's NATO-like? It means troops committed, but not American troops, as Trump then said the next day. No, we're not going to be on the ground. Okay, so then what are you going to do? We're going to be flying. Oh, okay, so what happens if they get shot down? Well, they won't land on the ground in Ukraine, I guess.
Sorry, I do want to pause here on this NATO-like security guarantee, because as is well established at this point, when it comes to Donald Trump, period, Putin too. And by the way, Marco Rubio has called Putin a butcher you shouldn't trust, and Donald Trump a con artist you shouldn't trust. And now he's out there saying, yeah, we're going to broker a deal that has NATO-like security guarantees that Putin is going to agree to and Donald Trump is going to implement. I'm sorry, but on its face, it's like fool me once, right? This is just literally stupid. But
and the security guarantees thing, let's take another layer, right? What is so powerful about NATO, it's not that there are all these countries in the mix together. It's that they're treaty bound. And not only are they treaty bound to each other, we as a nation are treaty bound to it because we passed a treaty back in the day when we had bipartisan support for foreign policy and it got through and it's a treaty. So we are treaty obligated. Are you telling me, Joe, that Donald Trump is going to sign on to security guarantees for Ukraine and then commit us to a treaty to validate and verify that we will participate in any protection of Russia? No fucking way, right?
Nope. No.
So basically no security guarantees. I guarantee that. I guarantee ain't no guarantee. But it would be great if we got it because that would go a long way on the diplomacy. So, but they're God bless them. I didn't call over to state. I didn't call my people over there. I didn't call anybody to ask, what are you negotiating?
Is there anybody left over there?
That's a whole other ball of wax, let me tell you. But there are human beings, if not AI bots, but they're definitely human beings working on details of this. And they're all going to come up against the same headwind, which is no matter what you put on paper, whatever the details are, the structures, it's ultimately going to be a political decision. And if you're telling me that Donald Trump is going to tell the MAGA base that we are going to commit forces to protect Ukraine and get a treaty that passes Congress to do it, it'd be crazy. He doesn't even want to support the sanctions bill that 90 U.S. senators currently have co-sponsored. There is no way. And so I think we're going to be in a hard spot in terms of actually moving to a deal. But and I'll shut up after this, I promise. My little rant here, but he really needs that photo op.
Yeah.
And he wants Zelensky and Putin to come together and shake hands. And that to him is really the deal. And yet he undermined that, which is what I was hinting at earlier, by already having the photo op with Putin. He took away the incentive. Putin has no incentive to go do a photo op now. He got what he needed.
Yep.
So I really there's no coherence, shocking, about where they're heading on this.
And it's in part, it's ironic, by the way, that the two of the people that they sent out on the Sunday shows were two of the people who in 2016 and the lead up to 2016 criticized Donald Trump the most, Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, co-sponsor of the legislation you're talking about, where he gives Trump all this latitude because he still always needs to get down on his hands and knees and lick his balls. But nonetheless, they sent him out on the Sunday shows. And first of all, they use their own words against them because these are two people who have, right?
Roll the tapes.
Seriously. I mean, both of them have been notoriously anti-Putin and pro-Ukraine, right? And like I said, Marco Rubio called Putin a butcher, war criminal, the worst. And we know where Lindsey Graham stands on all of this as well. But they sent them out to make this argument, to sell something that did or didn't come out of that summit that they couldn't tell us, but they wanted us to know that it was historic and that it was game changing and that and they couldn't tell us that there was a deal or what the constructs of that deal were, because there wasn't a freaking deal.
There isn't.
And right. And one of the big things that is very clearly important to Putin is that Ukraine does not get that security guarantee of being included in NATO. He very much does not want that. And so already that is a concession that the United States has handed him by saying NATO-like security guarantees. It's already saying to Putin and to Ukraine, we're not going to let you in the club, as my kids say. You can stand outside the club, but you can't get in the club, because that's one thing that is very important to Putin. But something else that they're trying to thread a needle on, which infuriates me, because I just think on American soil, what this would be like. And Amy McGrath last night was on her podcast. She equated Ukraine just giving Russia what they have already occupied up, like us giving up Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolinas and parts of Virginia. She's like, would you just be like, okay, Mexico, here you go, take it. So they were trying to do this little kabuki dance on Sunday where they were trying to make this thing look like there was a deal on the horizon and now it's up to Zelensky. What's up to Zelensky? You haven't even agreed on anything. But also, is part of this, honest to God, are they really proposing that Zelensky just give Putin the land that he's invaded?
Yes. And it's sort of like it's like Back to the Future on this policy, because the Europeans, to their credit, for months worked, including making commitments like to NATO, the 5% of GDP on defense spending, to try to reel back in this ridiculous expectation that ultimately is Donald Trump. This is the one great irony here is Donald Trump wanting to restore U.S. American-Russian relations. And the way to do that in his mind is to cauterize this conflict and force Ukraine to just capitulate so that we can get on to the better business of working with the number 2 country in the world, which is actually like the number 22 country in the world by any.
They have 11 time zones, Joel. They have 11 time zones.
I mean, seriously, talk about a worldview stuck in 1983. That is exactly what we have right now in the Oval. And so the challenge is that that's what he wants. There's a couple ironies, though, here. Putin is not interested in that. All right. I mean, Putin is interested in fucking us up, blowing up our politics, undermining us, weakening us. He's not interested in this great rapprochement with America. That's like a sideshow to him. That's what Trump wants. And if Putin was interested in it, he would say, yes, I'm going to the meeting. Yes, I'm doing a ceasefire. He's not saying yes to anything.
He's bombing them more.
I got to tell you, I something really weird. Like, I don't know how he's so mesmerizing. Like, George W. Bush said, I looked into his eyes and saw his soul and I trusted him. Barack Obama, God bless, in 2012 said to Medvedev, his number 2, then the president, hey, tell Vladimir in a hot mic, tell Vladimir, after the election, I'll have more space to be able to cut a deal with him. Then Trump the other day says to Macron, yeah. He wants to cut a deal for me. Can you believe it? No, the answer is no. He is who he is.
Yeah.
And it's not going to change.
Who Marco Rubio told us he was all those years ago.
And so this is why we have a problem, because we have somebody in the White House who's absolutely delusional about the motivations of Vladimir Putin. And he's unilaterally taking off the table all of the pressure. He took off the sanctions pressure. They're diminishing now over the past year because we haven't upped them, which is why there's a Senate bill to try to restore some economic pressure. He took away the political isolation, as you and I talked about. And then the third pillar, the military pillar, it's like God knows what day he's going to wake up and say no more weapons. And so thankfully the Europeans are stepping in, but it's very uncertain. That's what we have now. So basically Putin is in control of the frame. And Trump has nowhere to go with Putin anymore. So now he's like, oh, maybe Zelensky. Maybe I'll just beat him up a little bit more. And that's why the Europeans came in so quickly.
Yeah. And what do you say to this? Because they're always trying to spin, right? So like this is the new thing because he clearly did not and cannot negotiate peace with Putin. Putin's not, like you said, Trump, who loves to say somebody has cards, nobody has cards, has no cards here.
No cards. He has no cards.
No, which is his favorite line.
He's folded. You don't have cards when you fold.
Right. Right. So there's this is Zelensky's decision to make line, but there's also this new one. They all went out parroting the same thing. He has said it many, many times now. This was Rubio even said it. This is Biden's war. This was Joe Biden's war. Donald Trump didn't start it. Setting aside the fact that this is Putin's war. Joe Biden didn't start this war. And Donald Trump is the president now. And he campaigned on ending this conflict on day 1. And here we are, day 246, 7. I don't even know. I think it was day 240 on Friday. So whatever, how many days that is now. And not only is it clearly not over, they're bombing them more. And he's, like you said, he hasn't done the sanctions. And now instead of he's got 90 days, he's got 50 days, he's got 10 days. Now it's we might have a new trilat in 2 weeks. We might. So not only is the war not over and Putin's got all the cards and but all that, but it's Trump's it's Trump's term and they're blaming it on Biden. This is madness.
Well, look, they're spinning a blame fiction because they know they're failing. All right. So they have to find some way rhetorically to tactically convince enough people out there they think to get away with the news cycle for the day. A couple of facts. Russia was inside Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, for 4 years from 2017 to 2021. When Donald Trump was president then. he didn't get pushed out. That's a fact. Donald Trump was president when Putin was already inside Ukraine. Fact number 2, when Putin invaded in 2022 with a more heavy invasion, Trump called him a genius.
Yes, he did.
Trump said this was essentially a smart move.
I forgot that.
Joe Biden, and I got into a fight today on CNN about this because basically this guy was telling me, oh yeah, 3.5 years and our policy hasn't done anything. I said, are you kidding me? The policy saved Ukraine. The Biden policy and the bipartisan American policy, because it was bipartisan, saved Ukraine from being swallowed up by Russia. About the only political actor in America who didn't want that to happen was Donald Trump. So if Trump had been president, there would not be a Ukraine today, by the way. It would be known as the Ukraine,
Yeah.
a member of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
Yeah.
And then, let's just go to reality, which is that diplomacy is needed, but you can't do diplomacy when you're playing a weak hand. And Vladimir Putin knows that. Joe Biden gave Donald Trump a strong hand. Joe Biden and the Europeans kept firm in protecting Ukraine. And throughout the campaign, rather than saying how I'm going to leverage that or build on that, Trump said, I'll finish it with one phone call. One phone call. One phone call. Well, about a dozen phone calls in the humiliating meeting later, we're further away today from peace than we were when he took office, even though there are meetings. And I say this with a heavy heart, again, as a fan of diplomacy, because we've seen this movie before. It's called North Korea. It's called Kim Jong-un. And when Trump went to North Korea to meet with Kim, he got his photo op. And since that time, North Korea has done nothing but accelerate its nuclear weapons development. We got no deal out of that. Trump thought that made him look statesmanlike. It actually eliminated one last vestige of political leverage that he had over Kim. And so I am very skeptical, right? I think that for Rubio and Graham, they are hanging on by a thread in terms of their credibility. But, for Rubio, he is in the middle of all these wet noodle policy ideas. And then for Graham, he's the author. He's not just a co-sponsor. He's the author of that sanctions bill. And I think that they have decided that they are just going all in with Trump no matter what happens. And this is a far cry from the Lindsey Graham and the Marco Rubio of the last several years when we had a bipartisan policy on Ukraine.
It's so sad. I mean, it would be sad if I cared about either one of them, but it right? Like, I mean, they've long since established that, well, as maybe it was Steve Schmidt, I forget who said it, that Lindsey Graham in particular is a pilot fish, and without John McCain to like orbit, like
Lost.
some kind of remora, right? Like he's lost and he needs a new fish to pilot, and that's been Donald Trump. I mean, he even looks like him now. And for Rubio, it's craven ambition and self-servitude. I think that he honestly and truly believes that he can get along, do enough to get through this so that eventually the cult will fly his flag. And I think anybody who thinks that is a fool, because they're not. It's a very much dependent upon Donald Trump's existence. Like MAGA's not just going to slither on over and start painting Marco Rubio's face on their fucking F1.
No, they have long memories.
Right.
He ran against the king back in 2016.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, though, for Democrats, this is an opportunity. And this is where I hope that we get a little mojo back on using foreign policy as a political opportunity, because there's a lot here for the taking. Ultimately, what we want out of the Ukraine-Russia conflict is a sustainable peace. We don't want photo ops. We don't want weapons curtailments. We don't want to see sanctions fights back and forth. We want a sustainable peace. That is what is in the American national interest. That's what is in the interest of our allies. And I think if there's a silver lining, what we saw over the last week, it's that we still do have allies. We now, though, in this paradoxical, upside down, weird, backwards ass world that that you and I live in, that we didn't grow up in, but now we're watching. It's that Europe is coming to our defense. The European countries are the ones who are trying to save America from itself.
Yeah,
right
and
now.
Canada and Mexico. But yeah,
And Canada, Mexico, we didn't even talk about what it's like. I'll tell you, I was on vacation in Costa Rica over the last couple of weeks, and that's where I served in the Peace Corps. And so I went out to my village and I talked to my friends there, and I was like asking about how things are going and what's new. And they said to me, "What's going on in your country, Joel?" These are people in a rural village in Central America. They're like, "What is going on? And do they hate us all? Do they hate all the Latinos?" And I said, no, we don't. But right now, the policy and the people who won do. And what we have to do is try to figure out how to oppose that policy. But that's the image that we're giving off across Latin America. And so for Europeans to watch that humiliation fest around the table, pride matters everywhere around the world. Humans, we all have pride. And I really worry about the kind of humiliation cost that we are requiring of others to maintain alliances with us. And that's, there's a high cost, but the European leaders were willing to humiliate themselves because they fear that if Putin is not stopped sustainably, they will be next.
yeah. I mean, even Zelensky capitulated a little bit in what he wore. Right? Like, it wasn't like Donald Trump, JCPenney discount rack looks like he slept in his
suit, actually.
Suit. It was a pretty badass suit. And apparently he has a designer. And we could talk about Zelensky a little bit, but we don't have to really. What are you doing with a designer? I don't know. I think he likes to dip his little pinky in a little
not
bit
as
of
nice as my
there.
t-shirt, right?
But when he showed up in a t-shirt, as we now know, like the little Marjorie Taylor Greene's
boyfriend objected. But
Yeah.
did you hear? I got to say, did you hear what he did to the guy? It's like, oh, you're wearing the same suit you wore last time.
That was epic, and never forget, Zelensky comes from he's a smart, creative guy, right?
Comedian.
He comes from a world where he's quick on his feet, and I bet he's been sitting on that shit. I bet he knew that when he wore a suit that asshole was going to say something, and that. God, have you guys seen this Mr. Magoo looking fool? Like, I tweeted it out today. Somebody else posted this is what a year of having sex with Marjorie Taylor Greene does to you. This guy looks like he fell down the ugly tree and got beat up by every branch and in the face. His eyes, I'm serious. Remember Mr. Magoo? He literally looks like Mr. Magoo. Like, this guy, it looks like he eats shrimp and he's allergic. Like, I don't know what, I mean, granted, your eyes have to be semi-closed all the time if you're actually going to voluntarily fuck Marjorie Taylor Greene.
God.
But what Zelensky said, for anybody who may have missed it, Brian, what is his name? I don't remember. Brian fucks Taylor Greene. Brian Taylor Greene. He said the first time Zelensky was there, he gave him shit about not wearing a suit. He's a president of a country that's at war. He doesn't really wear suits, but whatever. And this time Zelensky did wear a monochromatic black suit. That was pretty badass. And Brian fucks Marjorie Taylor Greene said, "Thank you for wearing a suit, Mr. President. It looks good. And then Zelensky said, it's different from last time. And then he said, I see you're still wearing same suit though. And it was just amazing and epic. Yeah.
Epic.
Epic. Truly epic. So last bit about this though, to your point about diplomacy and peace, like, first of all, if we can get through and have a legitimate, free and fair midterm and reclaim the House, everything changes in terms of Donald Trump being, castrated more or less and being truly a lame duck, hopefully, God willing. But let's just say somehow Ukraine is able to sustain themselves with the assistance that they are getting from Europe and whatever we're doing right now. What is an exit strategy end game? What does peace look like? How do they get there? I mean, because they can't obviously fight this war forever.
Yeah, no, look, there are different formulas that can come to bear, and a lot of folks in the foreign policy community lay out diverse scenarios. We could talk at the meta level that Ukraine has to agree to, but bottom line is there is likely to be some land in eastern Ukraine that Russia controls physically, that it may continue to control, and that could potentially be part of it in exchange for a firm and binding peace agreement, a non-aggression pact. I believe it has to be backed up by firm, legally binding security guarantees from NATO and the United States. Quite frankly, I think we should be putting NATO in as a part of this deal, this agreement. And it would also, frankly, you would have to have, of course, the humanitarian exchange, the return of the stolen children, the thousands of Ukrainians that have been shipped off to Russia diabolically by Putin. It's incredible. And so those are some of the physical structures that have to get passed by the Ukrainian parliament as well. It's not a Zelensky alone decision. He is not an autocrat, despite what the right wing wants to say. He actually is the product of the democratic system that will have a vote. And there's an opposition in Ukraine and their diverse views about their future. So that's ultimately what it will look like. The problem is what, and I hate to say the problems because there's so many, but one of the key problems is that Putin is actually asking for more territory than he physically occupies right now, that he wants Ukraine to hand over to him in a diplomatic agreement, but he can't get it militarily. And he wants that land, which in the Donbass region would essentially provide him with a window to continue to invade. And so I feel like we are just in this for the long war, man. This is the long haul, Joe. This is like the expansion of NATO's borders, Finland, maintaining security assistance to Ukraine, continuing to provide intelligence support, all these things, and isolating Putin. This is a long game situation. And that's where Trump's ADD is really dangerous, because he thinks there's some kind of quick fix to this. There was a quick fix to the January 6th, incarcerated folks. Just free them all. There was a quick fix to the Afghanistan war. Cut a deal with the Taliban that has no conditions and release 5,000 terrorists, because nothing bad could come of that, right? Like, I don't know, having them savage the Afghan government quickly and take over the country, right? Like, the danger here is so potentially cataclysmic with a bad deal that thankfully Zelensky has enough cojones to say no. And the Europeans are basically unified, including Meloni, who's a friend of Trump. She's aligned with Ukraine, has been from the beginning, and is not wavered. But I think we're in this for the long haul. I think we very well need to just buckle down and expect that this will continue to be a hard slog, and accept that as the diplomacy continues, that we have to lay out the conditions as Democrats, as voices, people in politics, that we don't want a deal for deal's sake. There is no such thing as that. We want a real, sustainable, firm deal, and that is the only deal like that is one that Ukraine truly buys into, and that our allies are truly legally bound to, and that we are fully committed to as a country.
And we're not going to get one of those with Donald Trump at the helm.
Look, Vladimir Putin has like a 3% approval rating in the United States, right? Like, nobody likes Vladimir Putin except for basically Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And so
and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And
Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? So these guys you can't just cut a deal with Putin and ignore the Europeans and the Ukrainians and just be done with it.
Yeah.
I think Trump thought and thinks that way still. And so part of this ridiculousness is like educating the president of the United States that you can't do that. And he wants to do that, and he thinks he can do that, and he thinks that's the way it'll work, and it's not going to work.
Right.
And so I think we're in this for a long slog, but I do think there are territorial concessions that Ukraine can make, but certainly not the ones that Russia is asking for at this moment.
When he looks around domestically, though, at what he has been told in the first season of the shit show he couldn't do, that there was no path to doing some of the things that he wanted to do in relation to deportations, military occupations, police takeovers, etc. He's now looking domestically at a system that's accommodated all of the crazy that the gatekeepers said and the guardrails said no. So he's thinking, I mean, this is literally the kind of person who wants, his door painted gold and snaps his fingers and someone spray paints it gold instantly, and that's the kind of instantaneous. He's like a petulant toddler in that way, right? Like he has no frontal lobe. Like everything's a video game. Like I just want it, and I want it now. And he expects that that's the same thing that's going to happen because by the way, he's ended 6 wars. Joel, did you know that? He just snapped a finger in all these mystical wars. Yeah, he brokered peace between Mars and Venus. It's amazing. He's a deal. So
There's like no more wars anymore.
No more wars anywhere. No.
We're cool. It's all good.
Syria's fine. Netanyahu, by the way,
pro-Gaza is over.
Yeah. Well, Netanyahu's a war hero. Do you know Netanyahu and Trump are war heroes? They're war heroes now.
It's all good. It's all good.
He just expects that that's going to happen on the world stage, and shit just does not work like that.
Well, what you're bringing up, and I hate to say it like this, but I actually think this is sort of the core inflection point for America's role in the world. Because ultimately, there will be a moment where our allies are going to have to make a decision about how much they really want to throw in any longer with the United States. Right now, they do. Right now, they're there. They want to keep it. But there will be a moment because these countries, unlike in our domestic internal politics, right, where there is a system that he has a significant influence over, these are foreign sovereign countries and led by people who are elected by people who expect them to keep them safe and protect them, right? And those countries are going to have to basically say "niet" at a certain point. And that will isolate us. We are on the path, if we bungle this and do this in the wrong way, to self-isolating further. And then, of course, then you get, Trump's like bear hugging Russia, and that's about all we're left with. That's not a good place for the United States. And that's where I think cooler heads in Congress and others, people are seeing this, and they're seeing the potential red flags. This is why national security folks argue consistently to stick with our European allies, to make it bipartisan, because the risk is very high that if he moves forward in a way that is just try to cut a deal with Putin and force Ukraine, we could very well shed a significant amount of what has made us a great country over the last 7 or 8 decades since World War II, which is our alliances and our friends and our partners. We're already doing that with the tariff policy. We pushed a lot away. This is another potential danger spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. The damage that somebody can do in the call is coming from inside the house, right? Literally. Wow. Well, thank you
Sorry
so
for
much.
being a bright light,
No. Oh my God. Like that's the thing. When I hoped to live in interesting times, this is not at all what I had in mind. Right? Like
you must
I really
hard, yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Like I wrote about this in relationship to that summit, not summit, because I mean, you know me, I'm not that far left in a lot of ways as far as particular like this stuff. And I was a big Reagan fan as a kid. Breaking news. I really was. He was a very good orator. And for a kid whose dad was a lifelong Republican up until W and loved Reagan, like really, really loved the Shining City on a Hill, that whole narrative, right? And he imbued that in me. I remember watching Ronald Reagan say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, right? I remember as a kid, I've written about this, feeling like that's America, like that's us. We're strong. We have this tall, handsome movie star standing up to Russia. And this is bigger than, whether parties or whatever I understood about it in that moment. It represented American greatness to me on the world stage, but for righteousness. And to see what happened on Friday, and when you compare and contrast that, and it was the flyover that really sent me, because like that's millions of dollars, first of all, but he's using them as props, and the flyovers are reserved for, funerals for heads of state or whatever, or celebratory, for celebration. And this is for Vladimir Putin. And like all of that, when I thought it back to that moment with Reagan, like it really upset me. It really triggered me and pissed me off. And I just feel like we can't lose sight of who we were and who he is making us into.
And I know I'm elongating it, but I'll say this. One other thing that came up in my conversation with the international journalists today was their absolute confusion at how in the midst of a meeting in the Oval Office with the leader of a country at war, the president of the United States decided he should trash his predecessor, Joe Biden. And so it's like the antithesis. Could you imagine, would Ronald Reagan have trashed Jimmy Carter
No.
in the Oval Office?
No.
No. And it's not as if there weren't things that he could have pointed to. Of course, everyone can. But this sort of deep insecurity and the desire, the need to belittle his predecessor, not only is it small and embarrassing, but it also undermines the national unity that we need to continue to be a strong, safe, and secure country. That doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, because we aren't going to.
No.
But if you're constantly belittling the previous president from the other party, and at the same time talking about international affairs and diplomacy, you are truly undermining our ability to get to where you want to go, which is a peace agreement and your little Nobel Prize. I mean, it's befuddling. It's damaging to the country. It is embarrassing. It serves no purpose, but it's done all the time. It literally is a demonstration of the deep concern he has that he actually is overshadowed by Joe Biden on this issue. And he promised to end the war on day one with a phone call, and he knows he's failing. And rather than finding a solution that is sustainable and bipartisan and that works with our allies, he's trying every which way to force the dynamic to be what he wants, which is deeply, deeply concerning about its ability to actually be successful.
It's almost as if he's the type of fake deal maker that bankrupted casinos. Right. Well, with that, thank you, Joel, as always, for explaining stuff that is really complicated in a way that is really easy to digest and understand. This is incredibly important. I mean, I know people say that, nobody pays attention to foreign policy. I don't give a shit. I don't agree that that's true. And I think that people need to start paying attention, because there's massive implications of all of this. And that's why you're so fucking important. And I thank you, as always, for coming on and talking to me.
My pleasure, Joe. You're the best.
Thanks to Joel for joining us today. You can catch him on the Siren Network on Substack. He also has his own Substack called The Briefing Book. Protecting democracy has never been more urgent or more complicated, but conversations like this keep the fire alive and remind us why the fight matters. So stay engaged, stay informed, and remember, democracy is a verb. Participate, push back, and don't let the noise drown out your voice. If this episode moved you, please rate, review, and share Sanish with your people. Until next time, keep your head clear and your fight steady.